Now if we can just make it through tomorrow.
Come on, it's gonna be you and me and your brother and his ex and your nieces. What could go wrong?
Well, he could start drinking for one.
Which you will definitely do because Elizabeth will be there.
Right. And the girls could set the house on fire.
Which would definitely piss me off.
The fire extinguisher's under the sink.
I saw that.
So?
It's gonna be perfect.
Okay, let's all go. Let's go.
Hello and welcome. Welcome and hello. This is Wait, You Haven't Seen? It's a show where we talk about movies and specifically talk about a movie at least one of us has never seen before. I'm your host, Travis, aka TV's Travis. This is episode number 303, and our movie this week is Sleigh Ride from 2024. And here to talk with me about it, I think she may have seen this before. It's Olivia Dunkley. Olivia, how are you?
I'm great.
Excellent.
Happy to be here.
So, you've seen this movie before. In fact,
yes, like 50 times.
Yeah, you may have had a little hand in making the movie. What I'm curious about is, what is? Give me a short or brief history on how this movie came about.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a long history, but try to keep it short.
No,
so I worked on a web series called Super 7, and then the Sandra West Diaries was a break off from that. And the creator of that, Bob Griffith, aka Scott Rhodes, was his stage name. He and I became really good friends. And one day we were at lunch, and my first film had come out. I have a holiday boyfriend that's been out for 5 years now, and my first movie had come out, and I'd had a conversation with my distributor, and they'd said, well, if you ever have hang on, sorry.
No
if you ever have a holiday horror film, we'd be really interested. And I was like, oh, I will never do a holiday horror film because I'm not really a horror. Anyway, and then my friend was like, oh, I have an idea for a short film, a holiday horror film. And then he proceeded to tell me this idea in like 30 seconds. He gave me the full outline for this film. And when he was done, I was like, oh, we're going to make this movie. And he goes, no, it's just a short film. And I was like, not when I get done with it. So then I wrote the full script and did all the grunt work, and voila, movie. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love stories like that because sometimes it is just that you have that moment and you're like, nope, this is happening. I'm going to make this. And that's really, really cool. So you did the work to get this movie made. Now, you are the first person I've had on here that has actually made a film, like a feature film.
Really?
Yeah, we're all film enthusiasts and film lovers.
Right.
And I did some amateur filmmaking and like sketch comedy, but it was nothing that got beyond sort of the area that I was in. We just didn't have the industry at the time, nor did we really have the wherewithal for it. But what I'm curious with something like this, I have to feel like the hardest part is getting it going. Is that true? Like at what stage do you feel like a project is moving along well? Is it toughest to get it going? Is it somewhere in the middle where you can kind of things get tougher? I mean, sort of what's that like?
It's let's see, it's hard to get the whole thing going. It's hard to get yourself going to write the script. It's hard to get yourself to do the work to do that. And then once the script is ready and you decide, okay, I'm actually gonna make this into a movie, then there's all the hiring crew, hiring actors, buying costumes, finding locations, figuring out a shoot schedule, scheduling everybody in a way that everybody can shoot, coming up with the money, which is almost impossible. And from the beginning to the end, and then when the whole thing's shot. So then when you really feel like it's going is in the middle while you're shooting it, right? Because you're on set every day and you're making so much progress and it's actually getting created. And then after that, you have to give it, you're like, oh, we shot, but then you're not anywhere close to having a movie still. You still have to edit it, and then you have to color correct it, and you have to put music in it, and you have to fix the sound, and then you have to create a trailer, and you have to create there's just like endless
Right.
And
Okay.
through the whole thing, you're like, this is going to be amazing. And then you're like, oh my gosh, this is going to suck. And then you're like, oh, it's going to be amazing. And then you're like, why am I even doing this? So there's a whole, anyway, it's a process.
I once heard making a movie equated to throwing a dart from orbit and hitting a bullseye. And
Well, that's because you don't hit the bullseye. You have this whole thing planned and you do all this work and you try to make it fit your vision and then it gets done and you're like, well, okay. That was,
because there's
I
so
mean, it
much
comes
that
out
goes
good, but
into
it's
it,
not
right?
really what you had in your head,
Mhm.
Like I'm really grateful, my movies, we've been able to pull them together and they've come out good, right? Like people seem to like them and respond to them well, which
Mhm.
I truly appreciate, but it is never quite what you my partner who came up with the original story idea for Sleigh Ride, uh Robert, he has since died. He actually died last summer right before Sleigh Ride came out. It
Oh,
was a little heartbreaking for me. um but he said that even Star Wars, Steven Spielberg, right? I'm thinking the right person.
George
Sorry,
Lucas. Yeah.
Gorgeous. Thank you. Sorry, my brain, since 2 kids is gone. George Lucas even said, like, Star Wars was only 60% of what he was really going for. So then, you can't be a perfectionist and be a movie maker. You have to just be like,
I
"Okay,
wouldn't
it
think
is."
so because there's so many aspects of it that when you go and watch a movie, if I go and I see a movie, I'm seeing the final product, but you can't
Right.
really get a sense for what all goes into making that you never see on the screen either.
Oh, it is a lot of work, but it's really a fun. I have to say I really love the process. I work, especially since I started doing kind of everything myself.
Mhm.
That sounds that sounds crazy, but since I have full creative control of how it goes, it's just super fun. I get to write the script. I get to choose the projects that I want to make. I get to make them really fun. I star in them too, so I get to play these really fun roles. And at the same time, I'm in charge of what's happening on the set. So I get to have a say in how it's coming and going and what everybody's doing. And it's just fun. It's a fun process. And then to watch it come together, it's always a little bit up and down. There's a roller coaster. The first time you watch the movie, you're like, ah, like, wait, this isn't at all what I was. And then it comes together. So it just takes some finessing.
Sure. Do you think that it would be easier to get the money if you were making more concessions, but then by extension, that would also take away some of your creative control? So I wonder if that would make things more difficult in other ways.
Um, I don't know because I fund my films entirely. Let me just
Okay.
tell you, my experience was my first script, A Holiday Boyfriend. I had a very, very small budget, and my girlfriend, who helped me produce it, she said, "I'm gonna try to get some money." And so she found an investor who was willing to come up with the whole budget, and he just said, "I'm happy to pay the whole thing, but in the end, I'm gonna own it."
Mm,
And we were like, "Well, that's crazy." Like, we're not gonna like, what are we doing it for, right? If we're
right.
gonna make this movie, that's gonna be our movie when it's done. So then we passed on the money, and in my experience, mine only, right? Because I know there are people, I don't know who these people are, but there are people who have ideas for projects, and then they go out in the world and they find someone to fund them. That's not me. I am the person who is like, I will fund it myself so that I can first get it made and second make it the way I want to. So I guess the answer is I do feel like if I had somebody else providing money that they would want to have a say
Mhm.
in what I'm doing. And I don't know that that would be bad, but I don't want to find out. So I guess I just
That's fair. I mean, when you're
just
creating something too, like the
yes.
things that I create now, that's part of like this podcast and other podcasts that I'm on. I have control over what we do, and
Yes.
there's a freedom to that I wouldn't have if I was working for someone doing a show.
Exactly. That's exactly it. I feel like I
So,
have total freedom to do whatever I want. So,
and I mean, it's a trade-off, right? Because you're going to trade some of the potential, I guess success is the word, but like I don't know that that's necessarily right, because to produce something is a success. To make something and
Yeah.
put it out there
Yes.
is.
Yes.
Um, but you're going to trade some of maybe the notoriety or the widespread
Yes. The
success.
grandeur.
Yeah,
Yes.
but
Yes. Because you don't have enough money to put name actors into your movie, and then,
sure.
yeah.
But at the same time, you're getting to make the thing you really want. So
Right.
that has to be very fulfilling. And I'm gonna say, I watched this movie. I had a fun time. It
Oh,
was a lot of
good.
fun. Um,
Thank
you know,
you.
I do enjoy. I'm on a podcast that talks all about just horror movies as well, called Gore,
Okay.
and we love to find these smaller horror movies, because a lot of times you can just find those little diamonds in the rough and something that's just a lot of fun. And what I liked about this, the thing that really hooked me, was there was a sense of fun going on with it. And then who was playing Chris in this? His name Mitchell. Is that
Mitchell. Yeah.
Mitchell?
Mitchell Shira.
Um,
Hmm.
his turn as the Chris Kringle killer, I adored it. He just was going for it. I had a note to myself. I'm taking notes as I'm watching it, and one of my notes was his performance gave me a little bit of kind of a younger Brad Dourif feel in how he
Oh,
sort of
he probably
looked, and
loves
like,
that.
the way that he was, like, especially towards the end when everyone's around the Christmas tree and he's just hamming it up, and I was eating it all up. It was great. So
Good. Yeah, he was a gift, a godsend that just was given to me. I was super lucky to find him, but he obviously makes the film because it was a very hard role to play, and he just came in and nailed it.
yeah, no, he was wonderful, and really sold me on the killer without, like, he was over the top without being goofy, I guess would
Yep.
be the way to put it. So I really, because you almost need that in a movie like this. You need to kind of just go to an 11, and he really did, and I really appreciated that.
Well,
Um,
good.
so that was a lot of fun. Was was it a budgetary thing, or was the story always centered around basically being in the house and a couple of other small locations? Is that where you sort of started it that small, or did it just become that as a necessity?
So, mostly of necessity, but also there wasn't a huge, it's all happening in one night. So there
Hmm.
wasn't a great need for a lot of locations. The whole thing happens, in the one night. What the budgetary constraints came in when the first couple who is in the house when they meet the Kris Kringle killer,
Yep.
uh, I did that because then I didn't have to get a different house.
Okay.
And then it fed really well into the storyline, right? Where this was his house where he'd grown up, and then he just keeps revisiting it because of the horrific incident that happened while he was there. So
Okay. Excellent.
we can say his dad murdered his mother basically on
Hmm.
Christmas Eve, and so then he's uh, kind of fixated, obviously, on that event in his life, and so
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And the thing about it is it works, right? Having it focused around that. I'm a big fan of kind of keep things simple and plot wise. And if you go small scale, that's great. There's nothing wrong with small scale, especially horror. I feel like works better in a smaller scale, a more intimate setting, because you can make a better connection to characters when you do that. When you start getting
good.
real big, you start to get to a point of, like, it can get to where okay, these are just faces now. They don't really, I don't connect to them the way you do
Care
when
about those
something's,
people, yes,
yeah, at that small scale. And if I care, then I care when something happens one way or the other. I want to either like the characters or not like them. Like
right,
Rudy, for instance, the neighbor in this, Rudy Frost.
right.
Most of my notes around him were like, he's going to die, right? It's going to like, we got to get rid. He's terrible. Like, because he's just, it's one of those where the second he comes in and he starts talking, I'm like, oh, I hate this character. It's
Oh my gosh, he was so fun to create. It's funny because when I was writing the script, I was going kind of a different way with him. I was going to have my brother play the role because I have three brothers that are in the film, free labor.
oh
So,
yeah, that's always
um,
helpful.
So I had one brother. I was like, okay, I'll have him play this role. And then when I shared the script with Bob, because he helped me co-write it, obviously it was his original story idea. He said you should have this neighbor hit on her, and you should have him be, like kind of skeevy. And I was like, okay, well, then I can't have my brother play the role because that would be weird. And then that was really fun because then I was really able to take him and make him this like horrible person that everyone's just like, get this guy out of here. And then when he does get the ex,
Yep.
you're
And
you're not feeling so bad about him.
you're not. And that is a thing in horror movies I typically like to see in my horror movies is at least once I want, especially like this is part slasher. And in your slasher movies, you always want your slasher to at least do something, right? Like he's got
Right.
to, and in Halloween, they make you hate Michael by having him kill a dog. That immediately makes me hate Michael Myers. And then he gets to like he's taking out the drunk kids and all of that kind of stuff. So you're sort of semi rooting for him because the kids aren't great, but you
Yes.
also don't want him to win overall. And putting in a character like Rudy here does that because you want to see Chris Kringle killer do something like
Yes.
and at this small scale he can't be killing the Holly or Barry yet.
Right.
So
That's funny because the very first scene in the movie,
Mhm.
we always had that scene in the movie, but before the way we had written it, it was like it cuts to black and then we hear her screaming and struggling and blah 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 and all this stuff. And so he murdered her off screen. And when
Okay.
I got there on set, I was like, I don't want to give too much away. We don't see anybody murdered in this movie. We have to kill her on screen. And so then we switched it and we changed it up and made it sure that he at least slit somebody's throat, on screen. So
Sure. No, absolutely. And it's a great cold open or start to set the tone to then jump 7 years ahead.
yeah,
And we go, and it took me a minute to figure out where kind of things were set because early on there wasn't a lot of snow, and then suddenly I saw snow, and I'm like, okay, so we're not in California. We're somewhere with snow. That's good for your Christmas movie. That helps.
yes,
Um,
yes,
but I liked that open, and then you get the scene in the store, get to know Holly a little bit. Was it always a thing where we can give a little bit away? I'm not big on like repressing spoilers too much,
okay,
but was it always a thing to have the is she not with the affair angle? Was that always
yes,
sort of left to
yes.
be okay?
We wanted it to be open ended. We have no idea if she is or isn't. So
Okay.
was the plan.
And I liked that because it kept me wondering throughout it, like this Chris Kringle killer, it keeps getting revealed that he goes after the naughty ones, and that also
Mhm.
every time he would go, start yelling at people to be naughty. I just not too long ago have watched the Silent Night, Deadly Night
Yeah.
movies, and that was one of the first movie that's half his dialogue. The one character's dialogue and it is just to call people naughty. So it was reminding me of
I
that a little
mean,
bit.
yes. Sorry.
No, no,
What
no,
can I do? What can I
no.
say?
Here's the thing. I always feel
I hadn't
like
seen the movie, just so you know, I wasn't stealing it. It just it just lends itself to it.
it does, and on top of that, you know, it's just something where I had seen it recently, so that was in my head, and then I hear him saying
Yeah.
it. But Chris Kringle in this, I think, is more effective because of Mitchell's performance, because
Oh,
he's more unhinged and less like he's clearly disturbed,
yes.
but he's unhinged to a point of you're watching him, you're drawn to him, and watching him. So I really did enjoy that.
Awesome. Good. Which he's gonna have
And
to watch this show so he gets all these compliments. He deserves them. He deserves them all. I told him with the character, it was really fun because he was like, "How are you seeing this?" And I was like, "He's very Joker-esque, like from Batman."
Mhm.
He's got that Joker quality where he's kind of giddy and then he's sad and then he's got this really kind of off the wall. And then in my head, I wanted to create a character. I was really trying to keep the Christmas present in the film. And I said, what if he spoke almost entirely in Christmas songs?
I
Like
did.
that's how he thinks in his head Santa Claus talks, as
Mhm.
like these Christmas songs. So
Yeah, I
anyway,
liked
I
that.
thought he just did a great job. He both had the voice to carry off, some of the singing, and he just did a great job. I agree 100%. He
And
was
he was. And was it a thing too, because I like the parallel to the Joker in that he's sort of up and down and you're never entirely sure
mhm.
exactly how he's going to react to any situation, because you get some of the times where somebody fights back and he's just kind of smirking and almost laughing at them like what are you even doing, and other times where it
Right.
clearly bothers him and he like lashes out. It felt like a kid stunted in his emotional growth.
Oh, wow, that's fair. I agree with that. I agree with that observation 100%. I that and would fit perfectly with my, his past, the character's past.
Mhm.
So that's interesting. Yeah.
um so this was really fun too, in the way that it was a horror movie that has blood and has a little bit of gore in it, but it never went too far. Because that can be divisive, I think. Sometimes you can have, there's sort of two schools of thought in horror. There's the Halloween method, which is little, especially the first Halloween movie, the Carpenter one, very little blood, stuff happening off screen, but it's still R-rated and it's still really, it's tough subject matter. And then you have the
Right.
other end of it, which is your just uh, gore all over the place and really show that off. And I kind of liked the restraint here, where because we had that opening scene and there was you see her get killed, you see her come back into the room and her husband's dead, and then she gets killed early on.
Mhm.
um what was her character, Candy, I think, right? Is that her name?
Candy.
Yeah.
Yep.
So now we know, okay, we're in a horror movie and people can get killed and there can be blood at any point, and then it kind of calms itself down for a little while before that shot coming out to the police vehicle when Holly opens the door, and
Yes.
because at that point I'm thinking, wait, they posted some people outside, so did he take care of them or did he just sneak in? We don't know yet. And so that
Yeah, we don't
shot, when
know.
that opened up, that looked great and that was effective,
Oh,
because I wasn't ready for, I was both waiting for that level of gore to show up and not ready for it.
okay.
But the thing that I liked was, now for the rest of the movie, as a first time viewer, I don't know how much more we're going to get. Is it going to keep going further in that direction or is it not? And so I'm drawn in again, right? Because now
Oh,
I'm
good.
paying more attention to, ooh, is he going to get somebody else? Is somebody else going to get, what's going to happen? So I liked that. It was a nice amount of effects while keeping it, low enough too in a budget to be able to probably do easily, or more easily,
Yes.
I would guess.
I have to say, as the filmmaker, so there was a couple things going on. First of all, we're shooting in my brother's house. So my brother and his wife and their three kids, we moved them out of the house
Okay.
for 2.5 weeks, and they moved in with her family, her parents, who lived down the street. So it wasn't too far. But they were willing to just let us have the house. And then myself and half the crew moved into the house and we
Okay.
lived on the set while we shot. But the whole time you're trying not to get blood on your brother's couch and carpet. Like, it's so dumb. You're like, I'm shooting a horror movie and I'm like, don't get blood on the carpet and don't get blood on the couch. And I mean, we're just like, it's, like, unfortunately, it's something with low budget that you have to think about and worry about.
Yep.
So there was that going on. And then there was just, I think, general inexperience. So I think that it came out good. right? Like
Mhm.
we had a really good makeup artist and she did a great job, I thought, with blood placement and those kinds of things. And we did have Bob had a cousin who owns a special effects shop here and he gave us the head and those kinds of things. But again, you're trying not to get blood in the truck. It's my husband's truck. You know what I mean? Like there's all this stuff going on that you're like kind of countering yourself, like we need blood, and at the same time, don't get it on anything,
Right.
which is
Yeah,
it's
that's
almost impossible to do. But I'm happy to hear you say that you felt like it came out good because I feel like we had enough. That's one of the things that drew me to the storyline because I'm not a huge horror fan. I get
okay.
scared by horror films. They scare me. And so I didn't have a lot of research, a lot of background
Mhm.
with it.
Okay.
And so I came in a little bit inexperienced with this particular genre. And then I think it came out good. But I think it could have I think we could have pushed it a little bit more, but I don't know.
And
I don't
there's
know.
always I think there can always be room to push things more. It is, talking about it is the thing with low budget filmmaking. When I was doing the filming stuff that I did in my younger days, we had those same problems because we were filming in the house we lived in or at a
Right.
friend's house. And it's like, well, okay, we can't go too overboard with stuff because we got to clean this up, or it's a rental. We'd like to get our security deposit back. Um,
Yes. Exactly. That's exactly it.
and
So,
if you have more budget and you can just, oh well, we can just replace that. We
yes.
can rip the
If you could
carpet
just be
out
like, "Hey, we'll
afterwards, or
replace."
the set's going to get
Yes.
torn down. Yeah, you can be a lot more free and easy with sort of what you're doing. That would
Yes.
play into it. And
Yeah.
Faye in our chat mentions too, there's always room for going further in something like a sequel if you were to expand the story as
Yes,
well. So,
actually, we have thought about a sequel, so we'll see how Sleigh Ride does, if it does really well and people respond really well to it, because like I said, it's only been out since October, so I haven't even gotten a report on how it's doing, so I don't know if people are responding well or not at this point, but if it does really well, then we'll probably do another one.
so I'm curious about, you mentioned that early on it was your distributor of your last film said, hey, if you ever do a holiday themed horror film, we'd love to do that. How does then, once you get to the finished product of, okay, you're done shooting the film, now you're into post production, right? So you have to do, as you
Mhm.
said, the editing and the color correction and sound and all of that. How long is that process, or how long for this movie was that process from you finished shooting until you have a completed project? And then when you complete the project, how long does it take before you're distributed, and what kind of channels or ideas or options do you have for that? Because I'm curious about that, and I'm sure listeners would be as well.
So, I'm gonna tell you the long story. With A Holiday Boyfriend, what happened was we shot the whole thing and then I took it to an editor and she agreed to do it for my price, which was very low, if she could do it in the middle of other projects, right? She's
Mhm.
like, "I'll do this in my other time." And I was like, "Okay, no problem." And so then she edited the film together and we finally got it to a really good place. And then it still needed to be color corrected and sound mixed and all the music needed to be put in and all this stuff. And so my girlfriend who helped me produce it, Michelle Gonzalez, she said, I know this finishing house that I really like. Why don't you take it there? I said, "Okay, great." So I called this finishing house and they said, "Yeah, send us the movie." So we sent the movie over, and a woman owns the business. Her name is Christy Kilday, and at the time, her mom was her receptionist,
Okay.
and her mom had been a lawyer and had retired and was now a receptionist
Okay.
for her daughter. And her mom called me, and she said, "Hi, Olivia. This is Christy's mom." And I said, "Hi." And she said, "We understand you have this film." And she said, "What do you need done?" And I told her what I needed done. And she said, "Okay. And do you need a trailer?" And I was like, "Probably." And she's like, "And do you need a poster?" And I was like, "Uh, sure. Yeah, probably." Like I don't know what I need because I've never made a movie before, and
Right.
I'm just doing it off the cuff anyway. And so she said to me, "What can you," I said, "I don't have a lot of money." And she says, "Well, what can you afford?" And I told her, and it was a very low amount. And she said, "We can do it for that." She said, "We're very fortunate because we work for a lot of really big companies. And so we can get our money from them. And then we're here to support female filmmakers. So we're here to support you. And when I got off the phone with her, gosh, every time I tell this story, when I got off the phone with her, I burst into tears and I was just like, my gosh, this is like a little miracle. And during the phone call, she said to me, you should talk to my daughter about distribution. And I had never even thought about distribution, but Christy also works as a sales agent. And at the time, she had a deal with with a distributor. They could send her their stuff and she would finish their movies, and she could send them movies and they would distribute them.
Sounds
And
good.
so we finished A Holiday Boyfriend in September. And so to have it out in December, we had to make a deal immediately because they need 60 to 90 days to prep to get a film out.
Okay.
Your distributor does. So anyway, Christy was like, we could probably shop it around if we had more time, but do you want to just do this deal with this company? I was like, yes, absolutely. So we got Holiday Boyfriend out just in December, right after we finished it. So a Sleigh Ride, I'm a lifelong then supporter of Christy Kilday and KO Creative. That's her company. So if you need a film finished, KO Creative does the whole thing.
Excellent.
But anyway, we shot in January of 2023, and then I was hoping to finish it and get it distributed before 2024, and we didn't get the film finished in time. And so we did shop it around a little bit, but we didn't have a finished, we're still composing music and we're
Mhm.
still, just doing the last little bits of, and you're trying so hard. I was trying so hard to get it done in time to pitch it and sell it and get it distributed, which it has to be done by September. The end,
Right.
the end of September is
Yeah.
the latest, the latest you can do it in order to have it out in December. Anyway, so then we had an offer and they wanted to do it, they wanted to release it in March. And we were like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, at least let's shoot for Christmas in July
Right.
or Halloween or something, like that is with the movie. So we waited and we shopped it around some more. And in the end, we got a deal. She just is really good at that. So we got a deal. We got an offer, and they wanted it for their October release. And so that's what we did. So October 22nd, it came out. And any day now, it should start showing up on some of our free channels.
Yeah.
So
I was able to watch it actually through a service called Hoopla, which works through public libraries. So I know it's at least there, and I think I also saw it on Amazon, I believe.
yeah, it's
where I
on
saw it.
Amazon. It's on Amazon and Apple and all those, Google Play.
And I love the
Nice.
story that you worked with somebody who wants to help women in film and women filmmakers. That I love that because I do feel like we need more voices that aren't just crusty old white men making movies. There's
Sorry.
nope, you're fine.
Give
There's
me a second.
plenty.
Sorry.
Hmm?
I've got this tickle in my throat. I should have brought a drink in here.
No worries.
Okay, go on.
No, I love that because there's tons of films that I can identify with that I can see myself in, or I see interviews with or read interviews with directors and producers and writers that I can identify with that are like me, but I want to hear different voices and other voices. It's why I love seeing women doing stuff or people of color. I loved like Jordan Peele and the stuff that he's done in the last few years. The movies are so different from what I've seen before, yet also building on, what influenced him growing up. And so I love hearing that. And I love hearing the story that like you took it to somebody and they're like, yeah, we'll help you out because we want to see this happen. Because otherwise a movie like this is that much harder to get going. It's already hard enough to make a movie, I would assume.
She actually said to me that 1 in 100 films gets distributed.
Wow.
So
Wow.
it's a hard thing to work it out. So
Yeah. Did you ever think about, or have you done or thought about doing festival type circuits with films? Is that still something that gets done a lot, or were you kind of always thinking about just getting it out on streaming platforms and get it available that way?
So if I hadn't been offered this distribution deal, I for sure would have gone the film festival route.
Mhm.
Um, they actually ask you what film festivals you've been to with your film with your distributor. I was
Okay.
just really lucky that I didn't have to do that first. In my experience, film festivals don't they don't help you. I mean I'm sure that's not obviously that's not true, right? There are lots of films that get out through film festivals, but in my experience, and I've been to a lot of film festivals, you're the only one that goes and sees your film,
Mhm.
right? So you're in a room and it depends on the length, right? So if it's a short film, there'll be multiple short films shown, and everyone in the room is someone who's been in or has helped make that film, right? There's nobody there that's really, I don't know. It's not ever been anything that's like really helped anybody that I am aware of,
Mhm.
right? Like unless you're getting into like Cannes or you're getting into um Robert Redford's
Oh yeah,
uh
Sundance.
Sundance or something like that, right? It's not really going to help you. In my opinion, right? So I'm super grateful that I did not have to go that route. It's an expensive route to go because you have to pay to enter, and then anyway.
I could see that because it's sort of it, it equates a little bit for something that I would know of, which is podcasting and discoverability. There's so many podcasts out there. People have infinite choices, and especially if you do a podcast like I do, which is in film, there's a lot of people out there like me wanting to talk about movies, and it's hard to bubble up to the top uh,
Right.
sometimes. And I feel like film festivals can do that. I love going to film festivals, and I like it as a way to discover something that maybe I just wouldn't have found a different way. But as a if you're going around taking a movie to it, I feel like it's got to be like trying to find a needle in a stack of needles. You're
Yes.
just and I again from my perspective and my experience in doing stuff like this, it's just you just got to kind of keep going and hope that something can come along. You found that with the right distributor that's getting things out, and I am seeing that there's a service called Just Watch that helps you to find where movies are available online, what services a movie is currently on, if it's leaving a service soon. Is it available to rent, buy, stream, that kind of thing. And it is saying on there, looks like about a week we're going to see Sleigh Ride showing up on the Plex service and Roku as well. So
Nice.
it's going to be even more available, which is awesome because I do think
That's
this is one.
fantastic.
If you're a fan of horror or holiday movies that center around horror, which let's face it, there's been a resurgence of those in the last few years. There's been a lot of really fun
Yeah.
ones. This I feel like is one to watch because I just had fun with it, and it comes down to it was a very simple story, and it's funny that you say you're not a horror fan because as a horror fan, I was noticing things that I can be like, okay, there's some influence here. So maybe it was just influence through sort of in the ether. I'm
That was
not sure, or it's
that was
just
no,
you're well
that
read.
was from Robert.
Okay.
It was Robert. He was the one who, because he was a huge horror fan. He was always, even with a holiday boyfriend, he was like, and then she kills him and cuts him up and decorates her Christmas tree with him. Like even, you know what I mean? Like that was the movie he wanted to make. And so the body parts on the Christmas tree, that was definitely him. I mean, he had all these different ideas, that the head chopping off, that was him. He was just very much like he knew the genre. And so then I was fortunate to have his influence. So
And it was there even down to something like the Kris Kringle killer. He got out because he escaped while being transported from one asylum to another on the
uh,
holiday. I loved that because I'm wearing my Halloween themed Smith's Grove Sanitarium um, shirt because I love Halloween, and that was the fun thing was every Halloween movie, Michael Myers is for whatever reason being transported on Halloween or the day before.
right.
You would think at some point they would learn not to do that, right? Uh,
They would figure that out,
they
but
would
no,
just
they don't.
nope, they keep doing it. I Another one was in low budget movies like this, in these smaller movies, I love it because you get those surprise things like Mitchell playing Kris Kringle and how much fun he was. And then you sometimes will catch the name that you recognize or a face that you recognize from something. And for me, I saw the name Brian Krause, and I'm like,
Yep.
I know the name. Why do I know that name when it first showed up? So when he came on screen, I was like, that's why I know. And I hadn't seen him in anything in a little while. But how was that? He looked like he was been fun to work with.
He was wonderful to work with. He was so easy to work with. He was another one of those godsends that came straight down from heaven. So I decided that I wanted a name actor to play this Detective Donner, and I made an offer. I sent an offer letter to Kevin Sorbo's agent.
Okay.
Because Kevin Sorbo does a lot of films like this. Anyway, and his agents were just like, we need more money. We need more money. We need more money. And I said to him, look, guys, there isn't any more money. And they were like, look, he's just going to say no. And I'd gone up really beyond what I had. I'd
Mhm.
gone up, and they were like, he's just going to say no. And I was like, look, this is all I've got. And so they offered it to him and he did. He said no. And so he passed. And that was such a blessing, because then I was like, okay, so what am I going to do for this? And I kind of shopped it around and everybody was like, no, thank you. And I was like, hey, well, that makes sense because it's, a little bit of money and it's a small film, right? And so I went to work and I was helping a girlfriend decorate a restaurant, one of their like a high-end restaurant for Christmas. So
Okay.
that's how late it is in the game, right? Like it's already December
Right.
and we're shooting in January. So I'm like, okay, I gotta find somebody. And I pulled up and I parked and I had this like ding. I could ask Brian Krause. And Brian and I had met one time.
Okay.
I had worked with his ex-girlfriend on the web series Super 7 and Sandra West.
Okay.
So we had worked together on that and she and I had become good friends and I'd met Brian once and then that was it. And anyway, I was like, I'm going to just ask him on Instagram. So I get on Instagram and I message him and I'm like, "Hey Brian, I'm not sure if you remember me or not, but I was friends with your ex-girlfriend. I'm not going to say who, just in case. Um with your ex-girlfriend and we worked on this thing together and I'm shooting this movie and I'd like to give you this part. It pays this much and it's this many days. What do you think?" And he got back to me and he was just like, "Oh my gosh, it's so great to hear from you." And I know he doesn't know who I am, right? So great to hear from you. And I don't know who got to keep who out of the divorce with this person. He's like being funny. He was
Mhm.
super cute. Anyway, and he's like, why don't you send me the script? And so I sent him the script and he was like, yeah, we can do this. And then he was just like, I put him up in a hotel. He drove out. I paid him the money for what I would have for the flight, and he wanted to drive. So he drove out and he stayed in the hotel. And he came on set and he was so friendly and he was so professional and he was hit his marks and knew his lines and caught his light. And, he was a professional. He knows his stuff. And he was so great to work with. I would work with him anytime on every film again. He was just so great. So I was very like, ah, it was lucky. I was lucky. It worked out great.
And honestly, from people that I have spoken to before, and I agree with this. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than anything else, and you just and you won't know
Yeah.
until you do it. I find that when I'm booking guests for this show, somebody that I've never had on before, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to ask. Worst that happens is I get a no.
Yes.
And sometimes it works out, and that's great because it's a wonderful story to hear, and he brought something to it. And I wonder too, because it's a smaller film in scale and everything, and as you said, in experience around, do you think having somebody like that with that kind of a professionalism helps to elevate everything else, because everyone can kind of see what that person can bring to a set?
He was so I'm gonna just tell you, he was so amazing. And what happened on set was he's the detective, and all of my brothers, none of who are actors, played the cops.
Okay.
So they're together in every scene. And on watching them perform the scene, Brian was so good and my brothers were so bad. And I was like, "Oh my gosh," because I hadn't thought about it, right? Like, I hadn't thought to myself, like, putting this super professional actor with these super amateur, actors who are working for my brothers, working for free, who are doing
Mhm.
it for fun,
Yeah.
Brian was so great about it because he didn't complain and he didn't be like, "What is going on?" Like, he wasn't anything like that. He just came, he brought out his A game. He was so professional. But honestly, on set, I was like, "Oh, we're in trouble. This is not gonna play out well in the film," right? Like, it was gonna be so glaringly obvious. And then through the power of editing and film, I feel like it all worked out, right? Like, we were able to edit it together in such a way where it wasn't so apparent, like, that he was so, so great, that my brothers were so bad, right? Anyway, and I love having my brothers there. It's super fun for me, and really, they'll probably be in every movie I ever make. But that was really something that I had not thought through, and really, Brian handled it beautifully. So
That's
there's
great.
no question he outdid things.
I love hearing those kinds of stories because you always hear the stories of the people that are awful on set or are tough to work with or refuse to do things or whatever. So it always warms my heart when I hear a story about somebody who I recognize and I've liked their work, and then you hear, oh,
Yeah.
they're also great to work with, right?
Yes. Just a wonderful human being, really.
We have a show I do called Those Were the Days. We talk about classic television, basically TV shows that are more than 20 years old.
Okay.
And we do these themes. And one time around, we talked about Laverne and Shirley. And our running joke since then is whenever there's a TV show that had a couple or two people that had to play off of each other all the time, did they like each other or was it a Laverne and Shirley situation? Because our one co-host Amy loved Laverne and Shirley, and learning that the two of them became really antagonistic towards each other was tough for her. She's like, I don't love that. And so
I didn't know
I
that.
think it was when we were watching, if you remember the show Perfect Strangers from back in the 80s.
Yes.
And like the first question was, wait, are we, they liked each other, right? Like they got along okay? And it was like, yes, no, they're still friends to this day. So I love those kinds of stories. And Brian Krause, every time he shows up in something, he's one of those actors that just always makes me smile because he always brings, there's a warmth to him in his
Yeah, I agree.
performances. So that was fun to see because again, I'm going into this movie thinking, all right, I'm not going to know who anyone is in that. And
Right.
that's not a knock on anybody. It's just there's a lot of movies out
Yes.
there and a lot of people. So I'm like, all right, I'm not going to know anybody. And I see that name and I'm like, no one sounds, why do I know that name? And then he popped up and I said, oh yeah, that's cool. And plus I love that he's Detective Donner in a Christmas movie.
Yes.
That was
Detective Donner.
that was very good.
Well, I don't know if you noticed, everybody has kind of a Christmas
Mm-hmm.
name.
Yes.
Holly, Berry, Bo. I do have to say with Brian, just one last thing. For any of your viewers, if they decide to watch it, I just want to say this. I love with Brian does these lovely pauses in the movie where he is analyzing my character and we have these pregnant pauses. And it was so fun to act with him and have him just sitting there just staring at me like trying to, and I was just like, what is going on here? And then, he would move on. It was so fun because I feel like as an actress, I haven't always felt safe to take those kinds of pauses, right? To just take my time and really hang in the
Mm-hmm.
silence with somebody. And he was so unafraid to do that. Anyway, so if you watch the film, just enjoy those.
I
Because
noticed.
I just,
I did. I noticed those. Like it's Detective Donner trying to figure out Holly because there
yes,
is that undercurrent of like, it, Holly is so adamant in her faithfulness and innocence from Kris
deny,
Kringle,
deny,
and
deny.
yeah, and you
Yeah.
got Detective Donner's like, look, I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to say anything. I just need to know. Like he just wants to find that out,
Yeah.
and he's trying to figure
Yeah.
out how he can find that out. So that was great.
Yeah.
There is a bit at the end. I don't really want to spoil, but I wasn't expecting it at all. What I
The
want to
surprise
ask,
ending.
yes, was that always a part of it? Um, or did that sort of come about as you were going along? Like, we need, because endings are hard. Endings are always the hardest thing to write in pretty much anything. That was when we did sketch comedy. That was always the thing. Like, how are we going to get out of this sketch? What are we going to do? And sometimes it was just we just end and move on.
Yeah, with sketch comedy, it's hard to end.
It
That's
really
true.
is. That's where Monty Python
Yeah,
came up with their and now for something completely different, where that was just like we just need an out. Uh,
right.
but was that
No,
always a part of it to have that aspect in this, or did that come along as you were going?
yeah, the ending was why I decided to make the movie.
Okay.
So we were at lunch, and my friend, he tells me his, short story idea for his little short film that he had, and that was his ending. And when he finished, that's why I was like, "Oh, we're gonna make that movie. We're gonna make that movie." So yeah, I can take no credit for the ending. And literally, we did it exactly like he described it to me, with her in one place and exactly how it happened. That's how he described it to me. And so then that's exactly how I wrote it and how we shot it. So
Excellent. I
yeah.
I personally I liked that. I love movies that will do something and then not have to try to explain it
Yeah.
and just let it be a thing. Like, it's a fine line to walk, right? Because on one side, you don't want to just do a thing and then people be like, "Wait, what the hell?" But at the other end of it, I want, the log lady in Twin Peaks. Like, why is this lady carrying around a log and like a child? I don't know, and it's weird, but I'm interested in that now. So something like this, and to the way this movie wraps up and the ending of it, did kind of come out of nowhere, and yet I really liked it because there was just enough of it to like bait the hook and make me be like, did that really happen? No, 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 it absolutely did. We're seeing all the aftermath of it. But I'm like Detective Donner at one point, like, come on, really? Really? But also, maybe. So I enjoyed that quite a bit. And then
Oh, good. I'm glad.
I liked putting a stinger to kind of again bait the hook to do a sequel. So you gave yourself a way to do a
I did.
sequel.
Yeah.
Again, we won't spoil it, but is the what happened with the ending? If you were to do a sequel, is that something you would like to explore further, or do you want to keep it more mysterious?
Um, what happened at the ending? Are you wondering who my killer will be for the next?
No,
If I'll
I
have
mean more for
um,
how things resolved
her
for
back?
Holly. That aspect
Uh,
of how things ended with Holly. Um,
so I'll say this for the thoughts for the sequel. Let's
okay,
just say,
sure.
um, Holly uh, and Barry resolve their issues. They survive this night and they decide that they're gonna stick together and make this work. And Holly writes a book called Don't Be Prey. And she starts training and decides that she's never going to be in this situation again. She's smart enough to recognize that the only reason she's alive is because he wasn't trying to murder her right away. He was trying to resolve his past by killing her nicely. Right?
Yeah,
He's trying to kill her nicely so that he can kind of reform this memory in his past. And he's, got her confused with his mother, and he wants to not have so much blood in the scenario. So the only reason she makes it is because he's not just walking up and slitting her throat like he could,
yeah.
because she's got no, you know, training. She's feisty, right? She's a
Hmm.
feisty character, but she's untrained and, whatever. She got lucky and she's smart enough to recognize she got lucky. So when she's confronted in the second film, she's a little bit more prepared. But
Excellent. I like that.
yeah, so it'll be a little
Um,
bit more.
yeah, I like because she is feisty. I mean, how difficult was that scene with the in the vehicle in the car early on with Holly and Chris? Because it's choreography and like any kind of action is already tough, and now you're in a confined space to do it. Was that a tough scene to shoot?
So it was not tough to shoot. It was tough to get it to go the way I wanted it to.
Okay.
So we put the car on the trailer. So I don't know if you know this, but with car scenes, when you're
Mhm.
shooting something in the car, you can't be driving around fighting and stuff, you know, in traffic. And of course, we're not blocking off streets and getting permits and having stunt drivers around us. We're not doing any of that, right?
Sure.
We're driving on actual roads with actual drivers.
Mhm.
So we put the car on a trailer, which a car hauler, which my brother happened to have. That was so convenient. My goodness, I had my brothers had everything I needed. It was crazy. Different brother this time. But you know, my husband's driving in the hauler and I'm in the car and we're trying to communicate, but he's just driving. You know, he's just kind of keeping a steady pace and going straight.
Mhm.
And there were certain things, you know, where she's trying to hit the brakes and knock him forward and push the car and get, you know, trying to move us around, and none of that's happening in reality.
Mhm.
So we have to do it all in the choreography. And then we had my stunt man, Brian Finn, he did the stunt driving with the car where, you know, where it's swerving back and forth and we hit the brakes and like all that things that you see. So, you know, you cheat it. That's how
Mhm.
you do it. You know, just put that footage in there and then people think, you know, that's what's happening. But we're just driving around in a trailer, like, going the speed limit. You know? Then the whole time we're fighting and shooting and, you know, and it went really well. I thought it came out really well for
I
the
do too.
challenges and the limitations that we had, so
Yeah, I liked how Holly is she is feisty and she's smart without having to be like she doesn't have to be ex-military or she doesn't have to be somebody who does know how to fight. She just is scrappy and is able to, you know, ward him off a little bit, but at the same time gets nailed with an elbow, knocked unconscious for a minute, and then and I liked that moment because now Chris is like, shit, now I gotta, you know, I don't want to crash the car. So he's trying to steer it
right,
while Holly's
right.
passed out and her foot's jammed on the accelerator. So he's like, that felt real. Cause like in that situation, you're all of a sudden in that moment of like, oh no, this did not go the way that I planned at all. How am I going to fix this? Um,
Right?
so I
Yeah,
really,
I thought
I
it came
liked
out
that.
really well. I was happy with how it came out. It was, not exactly what I'd written and what I had in mind,
Mhm.
but I was super happy with how it ended up, so
Yeah. Even stuff like the whole climactic scene where Holly's tied to the chair. At one point you're able to get out of the chair because you're tied, your hands are tied, your feet are tied, but you're not tied to the chair, which is
right,
something that, you know, somebody could just forget to do.
right.
So it again gives me that feeling of like the realism and the connection to the characters because it's like, no, that's a mistake anybody could make. You
Yeah,
know.
it's funny that you say that. I did another interview and the host said the same thing. He said, "I liked that nobody was like a professional fighter, you know, like
Mhm.
nobody's you're all just kind of mucking around and wrestling, trying to figure it out and wrestling and, you know." And
Yeah.
I was like, "Well, yeah, you know, she's a housewife and he's, you know, a blue collar husband and, you know, this one's a psychopath." So, you know,
Yeah.
just we're all just kind of trying to figure it out.
Yep. I
So,
will say
yeah.
I knew that pocket knife was coming into play. As soon as it came
Well,
out
I made
and you were
it.
putting that in the stocking, I'm like, oh, can't wait to see who gets to use that. And it was great.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
No,
good.
this
Good.
was this is a super fun movie and definitely one you sit back and enjoy at Christmas. It's a fun Christmas horror movie without having to be like it's it doesn't have to be overly dark and it's got the right amount of sort of a campiness level to it with Mitchell's performance especially because he's just I mean he's just going for it and you
Yeah,
have to.
he
You
does.
need that.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, he did.
yeah, this is one I'm gonna watch it again next Christmas
Oh,
for
thank
sure,
you.
and I'll tell friends. We have groups of friends that get together to watch um, movies all the time, and we like to theme them around holidays. So this is one I'll try to bring up for Christmas holiday or Christmas in July maybe if I don't want to wait that long. But it was
Awesome.
a lot of fun to watch, and
Thank you.
it feels like it was fun to make, and that comes through to me as I'm
It
watching it.
was. I have to say, usually on set, I'm very like, it's like you're sitting in your everything's alone, right? Like I'm writing my script all by myself, and then
Mhm.
I'm producing it all by myself, and then it's all very easy and on my own time frame. And then it's time to shoot, and it's 12-hour days, and it's every day, and it's all day long, and this was all night long, and you're doing all this stuff, and usually it's so like it's like stressful. And this one was so fun to shoot. We just played. And Mitch was so fun. And he even told me that there was one point where I, like the very first day where he was doing it and he was asking, like, how was that? And I just said to him, just have fun. Like, just have fun. Just do it. Like, you're doing great. Just go with it. And he said he just kind of relaxed and he just went with it. And the whole set was just fun. Like the last day, the whole crew was in their boxers underwear, and it was. I didn't know there was like themes that they planned, but it was just really fun. We had a great experience. So I'm glad that came through in the movie.
It did. Also, I'm a sucker for a long take, and the whole scene where Holly escapes to the bathroom and then has to bandage herself up, and it all being was that was a single take, right? I'm not,
I
or
think
did
so.
it get
Yeah, I
stitched?
think one take. Yeah.
Because it was great because it's again because the way the movie has unfolded for me watching it. Now I'm at this scene, and I'm as it goes along, and there's not a cut, and there's not a cut, and we've had a moment like we saw where she goes out to the car and there's the head. So
Right.
you're waiting for something to happen, and it's this long take. So that was great tension building for a horror
Okay.
film. So I really enjoyed that.
Okay.
Without it having to be like horrendously dark material, although it is. I mean, I don't know. There's
Yeah.
a balance to it, and I really, really like that. And like I said, I'm a sucker for a good long take. So that was cool to see that plopped right in there too. So good job with that.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
So
My crew does all of that. They're so good.
mhm. Well, it came through. It came through in the movie, so I appreciate that as a film watcher. So Sleigh Ride, as I said, I watched it on Hoopla. It's going to be available on the Plex channel, on the Roku channel. Look for it if you use Just Watch, you'll find where it is, or you can rent and or buy it on all the services, your Apples and Amazons and all of that as well.
Yeah.
Totally worth
Yeah.
going after. I really really had a good time with it.
Oh,
Are you
cool.
working on anything now that you can talk about?
Um, so so first I need Sleigh Ride to make me some money, right? Because
Sure.
I fund my own films. So I once we've made some good money from Sleigh Ride, then for sure I'll be making my next one. My next one will be a action film as well, but it's an action romance. And I just have to say, my friend Bob, before he died, he called me one day and he's like, "Hey," and I was like, "Hi," and he goes, "I have a movie idea for you." And I said, "You do, huh?" And he goes, "Yeah, remember how I told you a movie idea and then you made that movie?" I was like, "Yeah, I know how that happened."
Yep.
He goes, "Yeah, I have a movie idea for you." And then he proceeded to tell me the idea for this movie. And I was like, "Oh, now I have to make that movie."
Oh, that's perfect.
He was super good at the movie ideas. Anyway, so my next movie will be another Bob Griffith original, I guess. Another one of his ideas that I expand, say it that
Excellent.
way.
And one other question I had for you, because you're not you don't have a lot of history with horror films, making a horror movie. Do you see yourself doing any more in the horror genre, making it and or maybe watching some more, or is it still kind of a thing where you get a little too scared from them?
Really, they scare me so much, and then I have bad dreams.
Mm, that's
I'm
tough.
that girl, I'm that person. Um, if I decide to make more, then I will have to start watching more because I'm a little too ignorant, right? Like I just need to be better educated. So I will be doing more research for sure. If I do make more, I probably would stick to I want to do Sleigh Ride 2, TOO,
Okay,
Sleigh Ride 2,
I like it.
right? Um, because I have that one, like the story arc kind of really fleshed out for me. And then I think that'll be a really fun role to play. It's funny because I don't like to watch horror films, but they are super fun to make. Like they're really fun to make them. It's fun to write them. It was fun to come up with the different endings for this one. It was just really fun. Um, so yeah, I would probably do that. But we'll just see, right? Because I have a holiday boyfriend out, and then I have Sleigh Ride out, and then I would do this other film, whichever one. This sounds terrible, but whichever one makes the most money, right? Because I can only make movies if they make money.
Sure. No, that
I can't make any more if they don't make any money. So whichever one makes the most money. So if Sleigh Ride definitely like is the one that's making me the most money, then I would definitely do another holiday horror film or another horror film because it's a genre where there's a really good audience and you don't have to have your big names and you don't have to have a big budget and you can still make a good profit off of it. So it's just
Yeah.
a good genre to be in. So
And I think that's why you see a lot of young actors and young filmmakers kind of get started with horror, is because
I agree.
it's easier. And that's what I have heard, is that it's fun to make. And I know when we would do sketches that were horror themed, those were always the fun ones to do. Our Halloween episodes were always great because we just got to cut loose and do different stuff all the time. And you can create, with sketch comedy, you can create different types of humor through the horror that you can't do in other genres. So
Right.
excellent. Well,
Yeah. No, it's super fun to make. So
oh,
I agree.
well, it comes through on screen. So
Thank you.
definitely, for sure, check out Sleigh Ride, and we'll be eagerly waiting to see what the next one is as well. I can't wait.
Awesome. Thank you so
And
much. I really appreciate your endorsement.
well, thank you for coming on the show and chatting with me. This was great. I have not had a filmmaker on before, so this was a lot of fun. So I appreciate you taking the time to come and chat with me.
It was my pleasure.
Well, thank you. If you like this conversation and you want to hear more of it, I do this every week. I record Sunday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern time at twitch.tv/tvstravis or on YouTube. And then it comes out as a podcast everywhere you can get your podcasts. Go to tvstravis.com and you can find the links to all the social media areas to find it, all the feeds to this show, to other shows that I do, as well as I have a Patreon for it. If you like the show and you want to help it to grow and allow me to do some of my live episodes like I did last year and I'm planning to do again this year in front of audience, the Patreon really does pay for that. So if you can do that as a listener, I appreciate that. Just listening to the show is more than I could ever hope for. So thank you for that. Next week on the show, I have coming back, who I had it written down, and I am bad at preparing sometimes.
I'm the same way.
I have Rilo Ward coming on. We're going to go in a slightly different direction. We're going to go in the musical direction, and we're going to be watching Wicked.
Oh,
So we'll see what that's all about. I've heard a lot of stuff about it. I haven't seen it yet, and Rilo would really like to talk about it. So that's what we're going to do next week. Come on back for that. So yeah, until then, Olivia, thank you so much. This was a pleasure. And anytime you want to come back, if you want to do some horror movie research and then come talk about a horror movie, we could do that too.
okay. I'll keep that in mind.
All right. Until next time, just remember to enjoy your movies. And as we get into 2025, let's be excellent to each other. This has been Wait You Haven't Seen.
Ho, 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 ho! I'm motherfucking Santa Claus!
I cackled at that point. I laughed so hard at that. It was amazing.